Good morning, everyone. I am Reverend Wendy Silvers, and you have arrived at the Awakened Mother Show. These are uncensored, raw, and unfiltered, really heart to heart dialogues with other moms, dads, scientists, professionals. Today, we're meeting an incredible executive chef and regenerative farmer. These are dialogues that are meant to uplift, inform, and inspire you to step into your own power as a mother, as a change maker, as a citizen of the world. And I'm so happy that you're here. Please subscribe, share, be with us. We are live on Wednesdays. And if you would just let me know if you can hear me by a thumbs up. I have a new microphone that I am using. And if you could just give me a thumbs up, that would be so great. I would really love to hear that before we proceed. And moving forward, I'm really, really happy to share with you today a woman that I had the pleasure of meeting several years ago. And I met her in Los Angeles. And she is a mama and she's a wife. She is the executive chef and founder of the Sage Plant-Based Bistro in Los Angeles. It is such a favorite restaurant among people that are really conscious about food and the land. Mollie Engelhart was raised vegan on a small farm in upstate New York. Her upbringing inspired a love for gardening, foodscaping, and cooking from scratch. After years of success in the restaurant industry, Mollie and her husband, Elias, decided to take their commitment a step further and started an organic regenerative farm, Sow a Heart, in nearby Fillmore, California. They now grow a variety of produce for their restaurants while returning food scraps back to the farm to turn into compost, keeping them from landfills. She continues to strive for better practices in the food industry, as well as advocating for those who grow and harvest America's food, and is expanding her reach with a 200-acre regenerative ranch in the Texas Hill Country. Whoop, whoop, whoop. You can subscribe to Mollie's CSA program and get healthy produce delivered to your door in the greater Los Angeles area. So please put your hands together and open your ears and your mind and your heart and help me welcome Mollie to the stage.
Hi,
Hello.
welcome. Thank you
Hello.
for having me. Thank you for welcoming me.
Oh, you
I'm
are so
honored to be on your show again. I think the last time was like in the back office at the restaurant, like in a corner. I was on with um, Del Bigtree's wife and some other
yes.
people. We were talking, but that was a long time ago. So thank you for having me again. I'm so honored to be here.
Well, I really am so happy that you're here, and I have followed you. I love the food at Sage, number one, and I love what you are about. That your heart, you are somebody whose words and actions match, and for me, that is such a guideline for who a person is. Because lots of people talk. Myself, I've done that, in the past where I'll say something, but what I see is there's such an intersection between what you say and what you do. Like you are living what you say.
Yes, my husband gets very frustrated sometimes. He says, "Does everything have to be fully in aligned with God and the creator and nature? Like, can we just sometimes do something because it seems like it's a good financial opportunity?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
so yes, I always ask, what would love do? What would
Right.
God do? When making choices, and always try to be the best cell in the body. If we're all a cell in the one body of the universe or God, we don't want to be a cancer cell. We want to be like the healthiest, thriving
Yes.
cell, supporting all the other cells. And so I say this a lot, and that's like kind of the context in which I live my life. How can I be the best cell in the body?
That is that's like a tweetable statement. Like that's like how can I be the best cell in the body of humanity? How can I be that? place, because we know it's just like seeds. When you plant the seeds in the soil, each seed affects the other seed. So it's not like, oh, it's just this one seed over here. It's the land.
No, they all communicate. And that's how all of us are. We are all a network of conversations in which we live inside of. And so
Mhm.
it's so important for us to have conversations with people, even people that we don't agree with. And remember that every conversation that we have has a ripple effect that we might not be able to see. An example I like to use is there's a Graham Sate TED Talk, which inspired my brother to start Kiss the Ground, which now think about 5 million people watch that film um, on Netflix, and all these farmers transitioned and thousands and million acres and in front of Congress and everything. Like, so much came from that. My brother being inspired by that one TED Talk. I got this farm and realized that food waste in the restaurants was really important from that one TED Talk. And it woke up my mind that, like, oh, it's not just like one way of healthy eating. Like, veganism is not the answer. Like, there's so many pathways
Mm.
to conscious eating and transforming our world through food. And so just that one TED Talk, and that's just two people in my family. Think about the ripple effect. And so we don't know, but every conversation we have, there's a ripple effect, and we need to remember that. And so that who we're being in each moment is someone that's causing that ripple effect in a positive way, because we're causing it no matter what.
That's so well said. And who is the TED Talk that you're referring to?
His name is Graham Sate. He's a soil scientist from, I think he's from Australia or New Zealand, but it's
Mhm.
definitely, I think it's 2013, his TED Talk. Definitely worth watching.
Thank you. I'll make sure that that's in the liner notes so people can watch
Excellent.
it. And I love that both you and your brother are so conscious. I mean, I mean, were your parents like that? Do you think do you think it was was it in reaction to your family? You know how kids are usually in alignment or in reaction.
We're in alignment. My mother's
Okay.
a ayahuasca shaman in Hawaii on Maui, and my father
Oh my
started
God.
Cafe Gratitude. And he's
Tircis Engelhart,
Tirsi is
right?
my stepmom. Yeah, Tirsi is my
Yes.
step. And my dad writes books on sacred commerce and how to have a win-win-win, um, and how to be in the flow of abundance. So yes, there's no escaping in my family. Sometimes people will be like, "Oh, I didn't talk to my brother for," and I'm like, "Oh my God, that would so not go over in my family." The people will be all over you, like, "There's an incompletion. Is what, bada. Let's get this. Okay, can you see it from their perspective?" There's no space for incompletion in our family. So yeah,
Mm,
no, I grew up, it's not a reaction to, it's either it's because of, or we chose them. Who knows? Like, I could have, this may
yeah.
be the path that I chose. And so I chose my mom and my dad on, a spiritual level before I even got here. We don't know for sure. We can only speculate.
Yeah.
So, but it definitely is in alignment. I have very spiritually awake parents, and my mother is way deeper down the rabbit hole than any of us probably. So, yeah, so I grew up in that. And I think I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I grew up in the conversation of questioning authority, questioning the government, questioning um and being willing to change. I used to be annoyed with my dad, be like, "Oh my God, he's into raw food, and now everything is raw food." And then he's like, "Oh, actually, I think lamb is a superfood." And you're like, "Oh, what happened, Dad?" But I think that he's passionate about whatever he's doing, and I think he realizes that wisdom is to follow something fully as it aligns with you, and when you learn something that shows you something different, is to be able to adjust to that new wisdom. And that is wisdom. It isn't to be stuck or fixed in one viewpoint as the viewpoint forever.
Mm,
And so I had a really great examples of that in my family, both pivoting around business and about spiritual views and food views and all of that. So I'm grateful for the family I grew up inside of and still have. And through COVID, so many people felt so alone. And I was blessed to be in a whole community of people that felt the same as I did, or at least in front of me felt the same way as I did.
I love that. I actually didn't know that about you. So that's like, what do you not know about Molly?
What do you not know?
But that's remarkable, and what a wonderful environment. I mean, not always easy or comfortable as you referenced, but how wonderful to have that being modeled as a child growing up, instead of the status quo of do what you're told, draw in, don't draw outside of the lines, don't try something, don't question, fall in line. You had the opposite.
Yes, and also made me, I don't, not make me, nobody can make you feel something. Gave me the space and always had me feel that what I had to say was important. And I think that that's also really important. Even if kids know what their voice has to say is important, then they will grow up to be adults that know that their voice is important. And
Gosh,
so I definitely had that from my family, and a lot of energy was spent on self-help, I guess, for a lack of a better term, from a very young age. So there was a lot of work done in the household on feelings, being not something that should be decision made, should not have anything to do with decision making. They're like a storm, they're gonna blow through, and that they don't mean very much. They're just what you're feeling. And that doesn't mean they're not valid or invalid. It's not really matter. They're just weather moving through. And so sometimes when I look at how the world is now, and we're giving so much credence to feelings, and, I had to dig in, like, maybe the way I was raised was not correct. Like, is giving so much credence to feelings valuable or important? And I don't think it is. Upon reflecting, I think because feelings are always going to change, and feelings are always going to be bigger and smaller. And if you're a man, your feelings are going to go with your hormonal cycle, which would be daily. And if you're a woman, your hormonal cycle is monthly, and feelings we could feel more strongly based on these changes in your body. And so you don't want to make big decisions based on your feelings, because they're not going to be consistent or be the same all the time. And so I like to make decisions based on my commitments, rather than my feelings. And I think that
mm.
that is important.
It's interesting because there's a difference between when I hear you talk about it, I think about emotions and I think about
Mhm,
feelings. And I also think about intuition, because I believe that the way that we feel our intuition. There's that, that there's different clairs, and one of the clairs is clairsentience, which is clear feeling, clear sensing. And
mhm.
so, and I'm pointing, you can't see it, but I'm
So
right
you're
beneath my
guttural.
sternum in my solar plexus, which is where your intuition often lies. That's where you get those senses, and you have this, okay, I can't give you a logical reason for why we need to turn down the other block instead of this block, but I'm saying we need to do that. And
And I'm not that, I would refer to that as like guttural instinct, and I'm big on that. I'm not, that's not what I'm saying. What
no, I know I
I
was,
feel
yeah,
afraid, I don't, it feels scary to move to Texas. It feels scary to leave my
yes.
my community. Does that mean I shouldn't do it? Or and no, my guttural, my that intuition is saying yes, but my feelings are afraid or
Oh,
sad, or having those kind of feelings, and I just have to let those kind of, that weather move through, and continue with what I believe I'm being led to do.
I agree with you completely. In human design, which I'm not an expert in, but there's different human design types. And actually, one of the human design types, it is it is encouraged that before one makes a decision, they allow the wave, which is what you're talking about, that wave to go through. Like, oh my gosh, I feel really scared. Well, of course you're going to feel scared. Your roots are here. It makes sense. It makes sense that you're questioning whether this is the right move. And at the same time, there's that part of you that you feel is guiding you in this direction. So it's that it's that balancing act of honoring both. And the when people are run purely by that emotional train, I think it leads to difficult situations. And but not acknowledging what's coming up also is not acknowledging part of you, because you may feel grief. You may, like, grief may come up for you. Wow, I'm taking my kids, my husband, we're all, I've been here for
Oh,
so
grief comes
long.
up every day. I walk around my farm and see this beautiful place I built. I see the olive trees dripping with olives and the avocado trees dripping with avocados and 18 inches of beautiful black soil that I created from a dust bowl. And I weep for that. I weep for the future I thought I could have in California. And
Yeah,
I'm brokenhearted. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm making the wrong decision.
exactly. It doesn't. Both can be
Every
held.
time I think, "Oh, maybe I should stay in California," something pushes, something comes up in the space and reminds me that I'm making the right decision.
Absolutely. I really honor that. And I also, I love what you were saying, going back a little bit about the feelings piece. And I feel, it's my in my listening to what's happened in the world, I find that people have made this knee-jerk reaction to other people, and they don't want to work through their own discomfort. They want to block, they want to cancel, they want to condemn, they want to do all the things that are the antithesis of working something through. And I believe every child and every adult wants to feel powerful. They want to feel accepted. They want to feel important,
Yeah, for
heard,
sure. Everybody
and
wants.
exactly. And we start with the little ones. We want to change the world. We get to do that by changing how we treat the children, and the inner children are like, you grew up in a home that was built on transformation. It sounds like a lot of, human evolution and transformation. And so, that's got its own, culture. And yet,
Mhm.
you know, you are an original thinker, which is one of the greatest gifts you can give a child, is to not only be an original thinker, but to trust it.
For sure. And I have that own battle with myself. The other day, my kid is screaming no at me, and I'm thinking to myself, I I want that passion and that resistance, and I want him to put the cat down because he's hurting him. I'm telling him that, right? Like, so it's like I want my 3-year-old. He is a warrior, just and the big kids, even the 8-year-old, are scared of him, and I don't want to have that warrior go out of him. He was born in the number book, he's born on the day of the liberator. Like, we may need him. Like, I want that in him. I want that fire in him, and I need him to be able to function in the household.
Right.
So I'm always trying to balance these 2 things and trying to remind him is like that power is to protect the family and not to be used on the family, right? Like, I'm just always trying to have him see that. But I do think that we have to look at each child and see how we can bring them up and not try to make them fit into a cookie cutter or make their gifts get crushed out of them at a young age. But how do we cultivate those gifts to be used in such a way that's powerful for them, for their life, for their future? And so
Amen.
that's my journey with my 3-year-old right now.
It's
um
beautiful. It's beautiful. I so love that, because, it's a joke. There's a joke that I've told, but if you raise empowered children,
mhm.
then be prepared for them being empowered. And how do you support them? Like what you're saying, like, how do you support your little warrior in being fully himself, but being part of the family, right?
Yeah,
Because that's it's important. It's an important piece for your peace of mind, for the other kids, for your baby and your husband. And so it's that dance.
it is a dance. And but I trust the process, and I trust that he chose us, and we're we're what's, and I try to trust even when my husband and I have different ideas about parenting. Think about, my husband grew up in 3 block walls with a tin roof, or actually a thatch roof. He got a tin roof once he moved to America and sent money back, but a thatch roof and no toilet, no electricity, no running water. And now he's raising kids in America with some resources, and it it's challenging. So he and I have different ideas about what's important. His ideas are very survival kind of
Right.
um based, and my ideas
Right.
are more about feelings, but like the whole being, and the whole being able to thrive in the world. And I believe that where my power comes from is being able to manage my feelings, being able to manage the no, being able to manage
Mhm.
the no and not make it mean anything, and be able to take the next step in the face of no agreement, take the next step in the face of no agreement. And so what's important to me, and he's like, they need to be able to machete something, like his is, it's all survival. And I have to trust that my children came to this combination, and that this combination is what is perfect for them. And so that is, part of the parenting journey. And I would say that the younger, more indoctrinated version of myself maybe would have resisted my
Mhm.
husband's way of parenting, and would have been trying to control every part of the parenting. And in that kind of new wave feminism, I don't need a man, like I can do it. But I recognize that there's value in both the masculine and the feminine. And I recognize that I exist in the masculine a lot, and it's practice for me to be in the feminine. And part of practicing being in the feminine is letting my husband, not letting my husband, having his role in the space. And so
Right.
these are all things that the 25, 35 even year old version of myself would not be able to see. I just would have been like, this is ridiculous. Bah, 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 bah. And upon reflecting, I realize what my husband brings is solely different than what I bring, and equally as important. And, people love to talk about, like, what is it, like toxic masculinity. And I'm like joking, because like, go have a farm, go have a flood on your farm, go have a hurricane come with no toxic masculinity. You're going to be shit out of luck. Like, I, we had 18 inches of water running across our whole farm in January. I mean, crazy, fences taken out, irrigation taken out, electricity taken out. And I remember my husband is with the tractor trying to hold the propane tank in place so that the kids can still take a hot bath later that night. Um,
Aw.
and he's got the tractor up in the water, and I'm like, "Babe, watch out, you're hitting the mulberry tree." And he says, "Cállate." And I had this girl was training to work for me that day, and she happened to be there, and she's like, "Oh my god, that was such toxic masculinity." And I was like, he didn't need to say "Cállate" to me in that moment, but he's literally having a tank that could explode. It's getting pulled down the driveway. And I'm worried about the mulberry tree, which is a very feminine like way to be looking at it. He's tearing
Right.
up the lawn basically, and I'm like, be careful of my tree I planted right there, right? And so I looked at her and I said, for sure in this moment we want toxic, and I put in quotation marks for those of you guys listening on some podcast channel. You can't see it, I'm putting air
Yeah.
quotes. Like,
Yeah.
it's not toxic. Like, you want a man that can tap into that, like, in the moment where your propane tank that you're going to need to cook and for your children, because the power is already out, and make a hot bath for your children, is about to float down the driveway. You want the man who's going to jump in front of it with a tractor and chain it to the tractor, and so it doesn't move, right? Like,
Yes.
that's what you actually want. And so I, I think that in my parenting, and this in my role as a mother, I've learned to be a wife. And that sounds crazy, because
Mhm.
you should learn to be a wife first or whatever. But my husband jokes, and he speaks English as a second language, so his distinctions in English are not quite as clear, but he always jokes. He says, I married a very liberal woman. She was a terrible wife. I No, he says, my first wife was a liberal woman. She was a terrible wife. My second wife is a conservative woman. She's an amazing wife and mother. He's only been married one time. He's literally
Right.
talking about the transformation of moving away from that kind of new wave feminism. I mean, I'm a executive chef. I run restaurants. I have 350 employees. Like, I am that like badass boss bitch like energy, right? Like, that's it. But that's not a wife energy, and it's not an ideal mother energy. And I had to learn that, and I had to surrender to marriage. I had to surrender to
Mm.
motherhood. And I said this a while ago, was not a popular opinion, but literally being a mother, like, think about it, I wake up in the morning, I'm breastfeeding, I'm wiping butts, I'm the diaper, throwing the thing, I'm like stumbling. And before I have had coffee, I might have wiped 2 butts, changed a diaper, had my boob in the baby's mouth, and maybe snuck in the other room and gave my husband a quickie, none of which was really about me. Like, I just want to get to my coffee, right? And so so this idea where we're just like chanting my body, my choice at children and teenagers and adults, it's not actually preparing us for being mothers, because there's like literally nothing about motherhood that has anything to do with my body, my choice. Like, I've been breastfeeding for 9 years. I've had a baby every 2 years, right? And my son will be 9, and in December I'll have breastfed for 9 years consecutively, because that's what there is to do. That's the best way to set up their microbiology and all of their stuff. So, and I'm not trying to get political one way or another about my body, my choice, but what I'm saying is that there is a surrender in motherhood that has nothing to do with that. And
Yes.
there's a beauty in that surrender, and it is more fulfilling than making $1 million. It is more fulfilling than opening a business, creating something from nothing. It is the most fulfilling thing, because it's what we were designed to do. And as long as we resist the unchosen roles of womanhood, there will be some sense of misery and sadness that we won't be able to fill. And by surrendering to the unchosen roles of womanhood, there's a fulfillment that can't be filled by anything else, in my opinion.
Mm.
My opinion, not like the truth.
That is so exquisite. Everybody who's listening, or if you're watching us, that was some powerful wisdom just laid out. So take a minute, take a breath, like replay that, because that's really, I mean, what you spoke to is so true. And even if you haven't birthed a child, like, I still believe it's mothers that are birthing babies. But if you are an adoptee, you're an adopted parent, or you are a foster parent, lean into that wisdom that Mollie just shared about how it reshapes you from the inside out, your chemistry, your outlook. I mean, I love what you just shared. I mean, God, Mollie, that is so true. It's so true.
And I'm a different person than I was 5 years ago,
Yeah.
and 6 years ago, and 10 years ago. And that is okay. It is okay to be different than you were.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
have to give ourselves the space in this world to change. And we can't be trapped by the view we had of ourselves when we were 18, when we were 25, when we have to be willing to have our lived experience inform who we are today. And I often see people that can't quite match their lived experience with some ideas that they formed about who they were a long time ago. And those ideas may have served them at that time,
Yeah.
but they do
Yeah.
not serve them anymore. But they can't reconcile that. And that is partially because the world has become so divisive
Oh,
that even my idea that I said, my body, my choice, like, someone's going to be like, she's a far right extremist, like, Bible thumping, whatever they're going to say about
right.
me. And I'm literally just saying that chant doesn't serve women. And I'm saying it doesn't serve us in motherhood. And so many women will become mothers. And it's the greatest gift of womanhood. It is the greatest gift of
I,
womanhood.
you
And
know,
Go ahead.
Yeah. I you're speaking my heart, because I often talk about how like people have said to me, how did you come to do the work you do? And I'm like, it chose me. Like, it wasn't like I sat down with a pad and I visioned, I do the life visioning process that Michael Beckwith teaches. And before that, it was just, sitting in the stillness. And I didn't sit down and go, okay, so what's my business plan? I'm going to, which I'm not putting down business plans, but it was just, I really felt like my life would not be complete if I did not experience the motherhood. Now, I have great empathy for women that aren't mothers, that really wanted to be mothers. So I'm not
I have so much empathy.
so much empathy.
But I also want to say that that's part of that new wave feminism, where we're taking that away from women and we don't even recognize what wound we're leaving. We're having women focus on their career, focus on being independent, being not needing a man, and all of these things that may add up to being 35, 37 and not married and not any chance of having children. And I want to say that I think that's a travesty. I think that we have to value the path of motherhood as much as we value any other path or more, because I was 36 years old, divorced, no children, two restaurants, money, stability. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like when you talk about that guttural, and I'm a master manifester. Like, I don't know how, I don't know whatever my brain waves that I came into this world with, like that's something that I have a skill set around.
Your frequency.
Yeah. And so I just thought, I always thought I'll adopt it. It's not a big deal. Blah, 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 blah. And let me back up a minute. So but it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I want children. I want children. And I started speaking, I want children, out of my mouth. And I didn't have a boyfriend. I was divorced. And back up in my early 30s, my dad had a mushroom ceremony to bless his land in Vacaville. And I went up there, and there was a grandmother from Mexico that was there performing the ceremony. And I was, being the good daughter, I came up, I was there, and I drank the tea. And I had two abortions in my early 20s that I never thought about again, treated them like a root canal. Like it was 100% like NBD, no big deal, root canal. And I had not thought about them again. Meh. And I never was like, oh, I could have had a baby at this age. Never thought about it again. Just out of my mind. In this mushroom tea journey, the divine feminine, God, I don't know what it was, came to me and said, you made a choice that was not yours to make. And I was super resistant. Like, this is like the liberalist version of myself, like 30 years old, like, how dare you, like completely upset. And I don't know if anybody's ever done mushrooms, but the more you resist whatever the lesson in, whether it's mushrooms or ayahuasca, the more you resist the plant medicine's lesson, the darker and harder it can get in the journey. And so it was just like, and I was like, I'm not going to be pro-life, like just resisting. And then I could see my uncle in real life. He was probably just walking across the field, but he was like getting older and turning into an old man, into a fetus, into a egg, and then back into a fetus and into a thing, and growing into a young man. And then it was like, it's not your choice to make. The voice was in the most unconditional love, like the most powerful unconditional love I've experienced in my life. No judgment, no making me wrong, just you made a choice that was not yours to make. And can you commit to never making that choice again? And I wouldn't commit it. I was resisting and I was, "Rah," and making that mean all types of stuff about what kind of people and all this stuff, right? And this is, 15 years ago now. It was my early 30s. Finally, I just took in a deep breath and said, okay, I promise I'll never make that choice again. And then the voice asked me, and never support anybody else in making that choice financially, emotionally, give your view, give your voice to that, a different possibility. And I said, yes. And I distinctly remember saying, but I'm not going to be outside of Planned Parenthood. Like in my head, like, I'm not going to be like this. I'm not. And I was like, and the voice was like, all I'm asking is that you don't make this choice again. Fast forward, I'm 36 years old. I'm divorced. Just broke up with my boyfriend, and I'm working in the restaurant. Culver City just got open. My ex-husband comes in. He's going through a bad time. He'd been drinking. He's now sober for a lot of years, I think 15 or 12 or whatever. A lot of years now he's been sober. But my ex-husband comes in, an argument happens, like in the restaurant, brand new restaurant, in front of guests. I'm in the kitchen. I'm crying, and one of my employees brings me a margarita, and I don't drink. I rarely drink. And he says, just drink this. You'll feel better. I drink 2 margaritas. Then he offers to drive me home. And then I sleep with this employee who does not speak English and is 13 years younger than me. And then the next morning I tell him, please don't ever tell anybody this happened. This is, sexual harassment, I'm sure. Please, it's never happened. Like, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed. I'm so sorry. You go back to your life. We'll just pretend this never happened. Never happened. And 2 weeks later, I'm pregnant. And I am set to think what I want to do is terminate it. And I have that guttural instinct feeling, not a feeling like I'm sad, but like, you promised God. And even if it was just a hallucination, you promised God, like you believe. You could try to convince yourself it was a hallucination now, but at the time you believed it was God and you promised God, and you can't go against God. And I knew that. So I went and I told him, we got to get married. He said, what? I said, we got to get married. I'm pregnant. And he said, like, translating through Google Translate on our phone, are you sure? Like, should I break up with my girlfriend? Like, a whole mess, right? And so we get married, and this is 10 years ago or whatever. And I found out I was pregnant in late October. We got married on Thanksgiving because the restaurant was closed and we could use the leftover catering food to feed everybody. We got married in our backyard. Nobody thought it was going to work. Everyone, including, people that were being very hopeful, did not think that it was going to work. And in January, I lost that baby. And we were already married, and people were like, oh my God, thank God you can annul the marriage. And we were doing a big catering for Indian wedding, but it was not the wedding. It was not a wedding. It was a 50th wedding anniversary for like the matriarch and patriarch of this big Indian family. And we were asked to come out and meet the chefs were asked to come out and meet the people asked to meet us. And so we come outside, and someone must have been translating for my husband. I can't remember exactly at this moment, but someone was translating for him. And I asked, so what do you think is the secret to 50 years of marriage? This is an accomplishment. I'm divorced and married again. Like, what is the accomplishment? And they said, it is 100% that we are not looking backwards. We're always looking forward. We were an arranged marriage. We didn't know each other. We got married, and everything we have, we've built together. And so we are never looking back to when you used to be so romantic, or when I used to want to have sex with you every day, and now I don't. Like, it's never been looking back. It's always been looking forward. And so when we got home, my husband texted me because we were text communicating because of the language barrier. And he said, maybe the baby arranged our marriage.
Oh.
And we, from that moment, decided to be married and decided to build something together and build a family and build a business and
Mm.
build a life together. And
Right.
we are very much in love, more than most of the people that I know. I feel super grateful for that. And it's all built on our commitment to make it work, and
Mm.
not built on kind of what many relationships are built on, like the emotion and the hormonal responses to each other. And I feel entirely blessed and grateful that I did that work, because
Mm.
I could have just been 45 right now with no husband and no children and restaurants, and that's it. Like that could have been my life so easily. And I'm just so grateful to be doing the work
Mm. That's beautiful. That
every
is
day.
so profound, Mollie. Wow.
So that's how I
That's
became pro-life.
yes. Yes. I understand. That makes sense. I mean, that was a really profound experience.
And now I have 4 children, and I'm in a beautiful marriage and a beautiful farm and a beautiful life that I would not have had. Like the version of me prior to that mushroom journey would have been like, "Ooh, that was a mistake," and then it would have been done, and then who knows what my life would have been.
Wow. It's so fascinating to me about choices. It's so fascinating to me about what presents in our lives and what we do with that. Because you could have, oh, that was just a trip. I was just hallucinating and, I don't really there are people that will, try and manipulate what their commitment was into serving their
What
agenda.
their ego, or yeah, what they want.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that if you're open to receiving, there's so much blessings always being handed, but they don't always look the way you think they're gonna look. They don't come in the package, that you thought they were gonna come in. Like, my husband didn't speak English. Like, there was things that could have been, barriers to what I want someone, so many women want someone who makes more money than them, and
Right.
well, that I can understand that desire, but also if you spend your whole life having a career and being super committed to making money, maybe you need someone who's gonna balance you in a different way. I don't know. Like,
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Right.
And so we have to realize that, the package that we envision might not be the package that God has for us.
Mhm.
And how can we be open to something different? And Paul, you know, another thing about this is I make up that my adopted son is one of the soul that I, aborted when I was 20 years old. Now that's a made up story that I've empowered, but he came all the way here from Guatemala to be reunited with his parents, and it didn't work out. And then he got very sick when he was eating American food here, and he found Mark Hyman on the internet, and Mark Hyman talked about regenerative agriculture, which had him find me on Instagram and YouTube, and he felt completely connected to me. He didn't know why, and
Oh,
he borrowed money and took an Uber here and showed up here to volunteer, which is when he was still in high school, when he's 17, and we adopted him, and now he's my son. And um, now that might not be true, but I do believe that we were connected. There was a reason. I felt a maternal love for him and pride of him from the moment that I saw him, even though I had nothing to do with him. I didn't birth him. I did it,
right.
nothing. And now he lives with us. He's moving to Texas with us, and he's going to be able to get his papers because now we're his parents and all of that. We went to court and we did all of that. And maybe it's not true, maybe that's a fantasy that I make up. Either way, I have an extraordinary 5th child that's completely loving and supporting our family, and we're
Mm.
loving and supporting him.
What a vision. What a beautiful vision for a life. There's so many things to unpack from what you said, and I want to honor the time that we have, and I want to invite you back to have more of a conversation about this, because what you're talking about is really surrendering the ego's attachment to life looking the way I think it should be. And, I think it's an interesting conversation about the termination. I think that's such a tricky, such a slippery slope, because some people think of abortion as birth control, and some people, there's certain situations where terminating it, even though it's like, I think one of the hardest decisions a woman could ever make, it could be something that really is, in that situation, a wise choice. But it's a hard choice. It's a really, really hard choice. And then to have a relationship with your husband that is so beautiful. And I think often about that whole idea, like, you came to your husband in a very different way that a lot of women may, in terms of, you weren't looking for your husband to complete you or to support you or to do all of the things that so many women do. And yet what
He does.
softened you, right, what softened you was the surrender into motherhood, the surrender into, I have a lot of this, I have a lot of the bells and whistles over here, but I don't have that. And look at how it's showing up. And I'm going to commit to this, because we know, I've been with my husband. I've been with him for 27 years. We'll be married for 24. And I know from lived experience that day in and day out, there are days where it's like, ah, and then there's days where it's like, ah, and sometimes it could be in the same day
Yeah.
where that happens. And so it is a commitment to put aside those those needs, that desire to get your instant gratification, and to look at a bigger vision for your life. What are we creating together? Like you were saying, what would God have me do? What would love have me do in this situation? And it's incredible that you were willing to honor that, to really honor that, and honor the commitment that you made in that mushroom trip years before. Like, that is really, I mean, that is devotion to a higher power. Your connection with a higher power, your respect, your devotion, your honoring that there's something greater than you that has a plan.
But those of us who don't believe there's something greater than us, I think have a void in them that's a universe God size void.
Yeah.
And Buddhism talks about the hungry ghost, that you can't fill that hungry ghost. It's only in faith, only in surrendering to that higher power. All the Amazon packages in the world will not fill that space in our heart. And this is something I'm working on in myself, is that I notice when things are harder, I pray a lot and I put a lot of attention on God or universe or
Right.
divine intelligence or whatever people, the non-triggering word for whatever you want to
All
believe.
that is.
I pray a lot when things are hard. Like right now, I'm praying a lot, praying every day, praying a lot, meditating a lot. But when things are going well, I tend to get more in the worldly possessions and the stuff and the vacations and the whatever. And I'm currently committed to trying to figure out, God, I want stability. Like, I don't want there to be these like waves of things that are hard and then easy and then hard and then easy. But I want to remember God in those moments when things are good. I want to be just as diligent of putting my attention there. And
Mhm.
I don't want to just be like, oh, time for me to manifest. This is not working over here. I'm going to manifest something else. I pray like that. I noticed that in myself, in full disclosure. Like I noticed that. And that's in this transition in what's happening with my businesses in California suffering and trying to move to Texas. I'm trying to remember that as we move out of this weather, move out of this struggle, that I still want to have the same commitment to having my attention on God. And I don't know what I need to do that, but that's my commitment. That's what I'm asking for guidance right now, is that I continue, that I don't have to have hard times to have lots of attention on
Yes.
God.
Yes. Well, I'm here for you to support you with that because prayer is my sacred medicine. It is, the prayer and meditation. And I often joke that, spiritual practice is not crisis management. And
Yes.
right. And I'm leading multiple prayer circles every day of the week. The only week that we don't have a prayer circle is Saturdays. And so I really appreciate your candor. It's so important for people that are listening and watching this to know that this remarkable human being, this woman who said yes on such a deep level, is just like you and me, right? We pray, we surrender, and then sometimes we take our will back, and then we go, oh, wait a minute, this is not really what I want to do. And there's this this old joke. It's like a parable. So let me see. So this guy goes to or this one. Let's change it. This woman goes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, I'm praying, and things are, they're getting better. They're getting better. I don't know what to do. What do you recommend?" And the doctor says, "Pray more." It's how do you handle the tough times? A minute
Pray
at a
more.
time. How do you handle the great times? A minute at a time.
Yeah.
So and we haven't gotten even into regenerative farming.
Or
And I
leaving
re-
California, or the lockdowns
yes.
impacting my business, all the things we meant to talk about.
This was perfect. God, this is really divinely guided. This was a divinely guided and inspired dialogue. What you shared was just so meaningful, and thank you. So we've got to get another one on before you go. And
Yeah,
you have
let's
great
get another
stuff.
one on the books. Can I just do one little plug before I leave?
Absolutely. I was going to say, how can people reach you and what's
Um,
happening?
so a couple of things are happening. I'm moving to Texas to 250 acres, like she said in the beginning of this. And we're currently raising money. We're almost like
Ah,
more than halfway there. We're doing an on-farm brewery and kombucheria, an event a center, a regenerative, it's going to be all on a regenerative agriculture farm. There's 30 tiny houses, a wedding venue, a second event space that could be for Reverend Wendy could do a prayer circle there. We could do yoga
yeah.
retreats. We could do all different kinds of retreats. So there's 30 tiny homes and then 3 bigger homes that can be rented out. So it'll be like capacity of 50 bedrooms when it's finished.
Mm.
And all of this with wedding venue, on farm to table restaurant, brewery, beautiful
Wow.
event space. So we're building all of this in Texas right now, and we're raising the money. So if and there's anybody out there that feels inspired by what I'm doing and what I'm up to in the world, this is a way that you could get involved. And it's an awesome business because it has a multiple different revenue streams. So there's the long farm stays, there's the food aspect, and there's the beer and kombucha aspect. And so there's multiple different revenue streams. So that is one thing. And we're having our first event there. So if you're just interested in coming and hanging out with me and a bunch of Dr. Andy Kaufman and Alex Zek and who else is Eileen McCusack, Mickey Willis. A bunch of us are going to be there talking about everything from regenerative agriculture to terrain theory to the illusion of authority. All different kinds of Luke Story's going to be there. Jess Magic is going to do a lead choir singing with all of us. Just like a lot of really awesome stuff. Mike Winter's going to be there talking about cryptocurrency. So really great lineup. It's called Confluence, and that is under the eclipse. We're having an eclipse. The farm is right under the eclipse. So October 12th through the 15th, Confluence. And if you want to join us for that, we'd love to have you. And it's confluence2023.com, where you can go buy your ticket. And my last name, 10 for 10% off, Engelhart 10. So both of those things I just wanted to make you guys aware of. And if you're in the LA area, as always, please support Sage or if you want to get a veggie box from the farm. And you can find me on Instagram. I'm Chef Mollie, and Soa Farm, Sovereignty Ranch, and Confluence_TX. So that was a lot of information, but I hope to connect with you guys more. And Wendy, I would love to be back on and talk about the things that we meant to talk about today.
Yes.
That would be excellent.
Well,
thank you for connecting with me and reaching out to me. And it was really nice to connect in this last minute way. And I just feel so honored to have had this conversation with you today.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm just thrilled, and I'm so glad that you were here, and I'm so glad that everybody showed up to support this and continue to like and subscribe the Awakened Mother Show. And there's lots happening. I have a 5-day challenge coming up that I'll share more about with you. And please support Mollie. And all of this will be in the show notes so that you can stay connected to her and go to Texas and have an opportunity to really live your life aligned to a divine principle that is really ordering your steps. You have that opportunity to shift and to really be in alignment. And as I always say at the end of every show, you are powerful beyond measure, loved beyond description, and a force for good in the world. So go forth and spread your magic and spread your love. Peace and many blessings.
Thank you.